Welcome to the Explainer. If you've ever been instantly deleted by a boss while standing safely behind it, desperately wondering what on earth just happened, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most punishing and, honestly, notoriously misunderstood MMO boss mechanics out there, the infamous Rampage. We're going to break down the hidden math and the invisible lists that literally dictate who lives and who dies during these massive raid encounters.
All right, let's quickly check out our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the threat of Rampage, then the unforgiving Rampage list. Third, we'll cover the deadly backfill trap, and finally, we'll wrap up with some advanced relief tanking strategies. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the anatomy of a Rampage, and really understanding the threat.
So the absolute crucial thing to wrap your head around here is that this isn't just some light, glancing blow or a generic area of effect swipe. When a boss rampages, the unlucky target eats an entirely separate, full combat round. That means every single main hand swing, any double or triple attacks the boss might have, and even the offhand strikes if the boss dual wields. The whole shebang. All of that massive damage gets instantly redirected to a single, non-tank target.
20%. That's a 1 in 5 chance. It's the default chance the boss rolls to trigger a Rampage check on every single main hand attack round. Think about how insanely fast a high-level boss swings. Every time that main hand comes down, there's a 20% chance that someone else in the raid is about to take a catastrophic amount of damage.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates why debuffing the boss with a slow spell is absolutely your first line of defense. Because Rampage is tied directly to main hand attacks, slowing the boss physically stretches out its attack timer. A slower boss means fewer swings, and fewer swings mean a drastically reduced volume of those deadly 20% Rampage rolls per minute. It's simple math, really, but it's the absolute foundation of raid survival.
Moving right along to Section 2, the invisible list and how these targets are actually chosen. Okay, this right here is the single biggest misconception in raid survival. Most players naturally assume the boss just attacks whoever made them the most angry, right? Well, that's your hate list, which is totally dynamic and based purely on aggro generation. But Rampage, it operates on an entirely separate, rigidly structured list. The Rampage list ignores your threat level completely. It targets strictly based on the order you entered the fight and the availability of open slots. Oh, and a quick but vital detail, it never picks the current main tank.
Think of the Rampage list exactly like assigned chairs in a giant auditorium. It's a vertical list of slots, top to bottom. It never sorts dynamically based on who's doing the most damage or cranking out the most healing. And crucially, this is the part that gets people killed. It absolutely never closes gaps when someone leaves. If the person in slot 1 dies, everyone else doesn't just magically slide up to fill the void. Nope, slot 1 just sits there empty and waiting.
Basically, the mechanic acts like a really simple computer program reading from top to bottom. On every single successful Rampage roll, it scans the list starting at slot 1. It's hunting for the very first valid target it can find. And what makes you valid? Well, you can't be the main tank, you can't be a corpse, you can't be actively feigning death, and you must be in physical range of the boss. The exact moment the boss finds someone fitting that description in the highest occupied slot, boom, they take the hit.
Which brings us to Section 3, the deadly backfill trap, or what happens when things go horribly wrong.
So, how do these slots actually empty out in the middle of a chaotic fight? If you're on the list, there are only a handful of ways your specific slot opens up. Death is obviously the most common one, but also zoning out of the area, logging off or camping, or a player landing a successful feigned death. If you do literally any of these actions, your designated slot instantly empties out, leaving a highly dangerous cap right near the top of the list.
And here is where the trap springs. Because the list stubbornly refuses to slide everyone else up to cover the empty space, a new player or even a newly summoned pet entering the fight doesn't go to the bottom of the list. Oh no, they automatically drop into the highest open slot available. So anyone who attacks while higher slots are empty is going to immediately jump straight to the top of the danger zone.
Come on, we've all heard somebody scream this in voice chat, right? I died to ramp, got rezzed, and I'm ramp again? This classic gamer frustration happens specifically because of this backfill mechanic. Here's the tragic play-by-play of their demise. They were the Rampage target. They died, which cleared their slot at the top of the list. They take a res, stand up, buff up, and bravely re-enter the fight. And because they were the next person to attack, they just dropped right back into that exact same dangerous top slot they just vacated. The boss rolls its 20%, scans from the top down, finds them sitting there, and just kills them all over again.
So, what's the practical fix here when you're recovering from a death?
You've got to play it smart. To survive the backfill trap, you basically have to use your raid members as a meat shield. You literally have to wait and hope someone else attacks first to fill that open slot before you stand up and re-engage. Just wait for a highly armored melee class or a really beefy pet to take a swing at the boss. They unwittingly take the high chair, and then you can safely join the fight, dropping into a much lower, much safer slot.
Let's dive into Section 4, Mastering the List with Advanced Relief Tanking Strategies. 35%. That specific number is the exact chance that a feigned death, commonly known as an FD, will successfully blur you off the boss's rampage list. Remember, a successful FD clears your slot, but it is definitely not guaranteed. It actually only wipes your name off that invisible list about 1/3 of the time.
But by understanding this blur mechanic, certain classes, specifically the Shadow Knight, can pull off some real heroics. They can intentionally swap onto the rampage list to act as a relief tank. Here's the exact sequence. When a fragile player is unexpectedly next in line to take a hit, the Shadow Knight uses feigned death to attempt a blur. If it works, their old slot is wiped clean. Step 2. They instantly stand up and re-engage the boss. Step 3. Because of that backfill trap we just learned about, the Shadow Knight pops straight into the highest open slot. They intentionally jump on the grenade, absorbing the rampage to protect the squishier players sitting below them.
But you've got to remember that 35% chance. Because the blur is not a sure thing by any stretch, it creates this frantic situation we call the FD loop. If the relief tank misses the 35% roll, they're still parked safely in their old, lower slot, so they have to feign death again and again. It requires immense patience and incredibly precise timing. This entire high-level strategy completely assumes that the high-priority spot stays open just long enough for the Shadow Knight's blur to finally stick, so they can quickly jump into it before a rogue or a wizard accidentally takes it instead.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. As we've seen, Rampage isn't just some random, chaotic burst of boss damage. It is a highly predictable, rigidly structured system that totally rewards knowledge and heavily punishes impatience. So now that you know the invisible math and the hidden rules behind the chaos, how will you manipulate the Rampage list in your raid tonight? Are you going to fall victim to the backfill trap, or will you master the FD loop? Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope this gives you the tactical edge to turn a guaranteed wipe into a flawless victory.